Madam President.
Senator from Rhode Island.
Well, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise to discuss the fiscal year 2017 National Defense Authorization Act. After several months of debate and negotiation, the House and Senate Armed Services Committee have arrived at a completed conference agreement. This will be the 55th consecutive time that we pass the National Defense Authorization Act, which sets national security policy and provides important authorities to the Department of Defense. I want to begin by thanking Chairman McCain for his leadership during the course of this year. At his direction, the Senate Armed Services Committee undertook a robust review of how the Department develops strategic guidance and executes their business processes to help the Department operate more effectively and efficiently. I commend the Chairman for making this effort a priority for the committee, and I appreciate his willingness to work in a bipartisan fashion on this important endeavor. The conference report that we are considering today includes many of the Senate's reforms, including efforts to improve the defense strategy documents produced by the Department and reorganizing the Office of the Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics to ensure that the Pentagon emphasizes research and innovation in support of our warfighters. In particular, one of the most important reform efforts included in the final conference agreement is a Senate provision that would create cross-functional teams. This is a new tool for the Secretary of Defense to manage the formation and implementation of policies and solutions for complex problems that inherently cut across the many stovepiped functional organizations in the Department of Defense. The private sector has pioneered and mastered this highly effective integration mechanism for a generation, and business schools and business consultancies have championed its use for decades. I consider this provision to be one of the most important reform initiatives in this bill. None of this would have happened without the leadership, the guidance, and the constant urging of the Chairman, Senator McCain, and once again, I commend him for this extraordinary effort. It is imperative, as we introduce these reforms, that we continue to collaborate with the Department of Defense to ensure that they contribute to our national security and do not create unnecessary and detrimental consequences. So this will be a partnership going forward to ensure that these reforms are adequate, appropriate, and work for the benefit of the men and women in uniform. And that's a process that we will all be engaged in. Now, with respect to the budget, the conference agreement, which we are considering today, authorizes a total of $619 billion, which includes $543.4 billion in base budget funding for the Department of Defense and certain security activities of the Department of Energy, and $67.8 billion in overseas contingency operations funding, OCO. And this OCO amount includes $5.8 billion in supplemental funding requested by President Obama for operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, as well as an additional $3.2 billion over President Obama's budget request for base budget requirements, primarily devoted to increased end strength. There is always concerns about increasing OCO funding above the President's request without a corresponding increase in other areas. And while the OCO account is exempt from the budget caps, the purpose of the Budget Control Act was to establish proportionally equal caps on defense and non-defense discretionary spending. During consideration of the NDAA, the House and Senate had different approaches on how best to fund base budget requirements and ongoing military operations. However, after a robust debate, we reached an agreement on a modest increase in OCO to fund increased end strength and to replenish depleted munitions inventories. With respect to Afghanistan, the conference agreement supports our military operations. Specifically, the bill authorizes approximately 8,400 troops in Afghanistan in 2017, including fully funding the Afghan Security Forces Fund at $4.26 billion to continue to support the Afghan national defense and security forces. Likewise, the bill contains $814 million to enhance the capabilities of the Afghan Air Force and begin a transition from Mi-17 to UH-60 helicopters. And also, and this is an issue that I support very strongly after a recent trip to Afghanistan, it accelerates the Afghan Aviation Initiative, which is designed to build greater rotary wing capabilities and fixed wing capabilities in the Afghan Air Force. And this is a critical battlefield advantage that the Afghan forces will have over the Taliban. With respect to Europe, we have fully funded the President's request of $3.4 billion for the European Reassurance Initiative. This funding will support critical investments that will increase rotational U.S. military presence in Europe, improve key infrastructure, and enhance allied and partner military capabilities to respond to external aggression and preserve regional stability. The agreement also includes an authorization for $350 million for the Ukraine Training Assistance Initiative to continue and expand security assistance and intelligence support to the Ukrainian security forces to protect their sovereignty and encourage a continued focus on robust defense and their efforts to reform the defense. With regard to our special operations forces that are at the forefront of our fight against ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist groups, the bill also includes important reforms designed to improve the oversight and advocacy for their important efforts by enhancing the role of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low-Intensity Conflict. And that, I think, will be something we will watch and encourage. With respect to other aspects of our security cooperation programs, the conference agreement includes a comprehensive reform of the Defense Department's security cooperation programs. This is the first time such a reform has been undertaken, and it is an important effort to ensure there is unity of effort across our government in the security assistance arena. Likewise, the conference agreement includes a provision that would enhance the scope and authorities of the Global Engagement Center. For too long, we have been losing the information space to our adversaries, both state and non-state actors. It's my hope that by providing this critical center at the State Department with a powerful mandate, we can begin to improve our efforts in the information space. The bill also supports modernization efforts of many different platforms. I'm particularly pleased to see that we've continued 2-a-year construction of the Virginia-class submarine. It also supports additional requests for advanced procurement to keep this production on track. Furthermore, it authorizes $1.9 billion for the Ohio-class replacement, which is the first strategic nuclear submarine procurement funds to begin the process of reinvigorating and rebuilding our nuclear deterrence underwater through the Ohio-class replacement. In addition to modernization of our underwater forces, we're also looking at modernization of our triad of air, sea, and ground delivery platforms for strategic deterrence. This is the beginning of a multi-decade-long effort involving 3 major acquisition programs: our ICBM ballistic missile submarines, as I've mentioned, the Ohio-class replacement, long-range penetrating bombers, and also the land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles. Most importantly, we'll be modernizing their command and control system to ensure our president always has positive control of these forces. As I stated many times, modernization is critical in light of the increasingly belligerent actions by Russia, who conducted a nuclear exercise immediately after invading Crimea as a form of nuclear intimidation. In the area of technology and acquisition, I'm pleased the conference report takes a number of important steps to help DoD maintain its technological superiority. We continue to build on past work on acquisition reform undertaken by the committee, as well as the successes of Defense Secretary Carter and his colleagues, including Undersecretary Kendall, in controlling the cost of major weapons systems procurement programs. The agreement includes a number of steps to improve defense acquisition processes, including strengthening the acquisition workforce, simplifying and streamlining regulatory and bureaucratic burdens on the government and industry, making it easier for DoD to work with innovative small businesses and commercial companies, and promoting the use of prototyping and rapid fielding to speed the development and deployment of advanced new systems. In the area of technological innovation, I hope that reconstituting the position of Undersecretary of Research and Engineering will help promote connections with innovators both inside and outside of the government, and ensure that the policies and practices governing our R&D programs, our defense labs, and our engagement with universities and industry are optimized to promote the most efficient and effective development of new systems and technologies. Finally, I think the conference report includes important provisions designed to streamline and modernize Pentagon management processes. The bill supports efforts to develop and execute modern management techniques and practices modeled on private sector best practices, including the use of big data to improve Pentagon business processes. I believe that refining Pentagon management practices will result in cost savings and efficiencies, freeing up funds for other critical needs. I want to note that the conference did not include several provisions regarding the application of Obama administration's executive orders related to labor, safe workplace, and LGBT issues, And many of these are very problematic, and I hope that we can continue to work to ensure the department engages with physically and socially responsible and effective contractors to the best benefit of warfighters and taxpayers alike. One of the key issues, of course, for us was readiness of our troops. I'm pleased the conference report includes significant resources for the military services unfunded requirements with the goal of restoring full spectrum readiness as soon as possible. For example, the bill includes additional funding for Army units to conduct additional home station training in order to prepare them for future combat training center rotations, as well as additional flight training for the other services. We've also included significant resources to provide additional depot maintenance to repair our military aircraft, ships, and combat vehicles. And there's also additional funding to better sustain our military installations, specifically in the facilities, restoration, and modernization accounts. In the area of military personnel, the conference agreement accomplishes much on behalf of our service members and the Department of Defense because we owe them much. It authorizes a 2.1% pay raise for all service members, supports requested increases in the housing benefit, and reauthorizes a number of expiring bonus and special pay authorities to encourage enlistment, re-enlistment, and continued service by active duty and reserve component personnel. Unfortunately, the bill does not include the provision in the Senate-passed bill that would have required women to register for the draft to the same extent that men are required. I continue to believe that this is the right policy for the nation and the military. If we're going to have a draft, women must share equally the burden and privilege of service, and we must be able to take advantage of their extraordinary talents, because without those talents, our military today could not function as it does. The bill does, however, establish an independent national commission on military and national public service to study the need for military selective service processes, including whether the nation continues to need a mechanism designed to draft large numbers of replacement combat troops, whether women should be required to participate equally in the process, and the means by which to foster a greater attitude and ethos of service among United States young men and women, including an increased propensity for military service. And finally, how to obtain from military and national public service individuals for skills for which the nation has a critical need. This commission could provide valuable insights to proceed, or how we should proceed, is particularly in a state of national emergency, in pulling together the best of our young people to serve the nation. The agreement also touches upon end strength. It's higher than proposed by the administration. This, too, I think, is an important step. With respect to health care, the bill contains a robust package of health care reforms that will bring the military health care program in line with the best practices in the civilian health care industry. And this is something that we have to continue to emphasize, the ability to care and treat for all of our personnel with respect to, and retirees with respect to their health care. We have done a lot of, I think, important work in this legislation. And let me conclude as I began by thanking Chairman McCain and my Senate colleagues on the committee for their thoughtful contributions to this process. I'd also like to thank my colleagues in the House Armed Services Committee, Chairman Mac Thornberry and Ranking Member Adam Smith. They did a superb job along with their staff. This was truly a thoughtful, bipartisan process that resulted in a bill that I believe will receive overwhelming support here on the floor of the Senate, as it did in the House. And finally, of course, this agreement would not have been possible without the extraordinary work of the staff. And I want to thank so many, but particularly let me thank Chris Bose, Steve Barney, and all the Majority Committee staff for their hard work. And on the Democratic side, let me thank my staff director, Liz King. Also, let me thank Gary Leland, Creighton Green, Carolyn Tudor, Maggie McNamara, Jonathan Clark, Jonathan Epstein, Ozga Gulescu, Jody Bennett, Mike Kiken, Kirk McConnell, Mike Noblett, John Quirk, Aaron Serafin, and John Green. I deeply appreciate all their efforts, and they have made this bill possible. And with that, Madam President, I would yield the floor.